Schoner, it's time for your Flag News Update. A Grand Forks woman who police say was shot by her son has died. Police say 53-year-old Jennifer Harrison died of her injuries yesterday. Investigators believe it was her son, 21-year-old Tyler Harrison, who shot her multiple times last Wednesday at a home in Grand Forks before shooting himself in the driveway where he died. There's no word from police on a motive so far. North Dakota First Lady Catherine Burgum will host an event on Thursday aimed at eliminating the shame and stigma that surrounds addiction.
Whenever I go speak somewhere, I typically ask, hey, how many of you have been impacted by the disease of addiction in some way? And, almost everyone raises their hand at those events.
The free conference at the Alaris Center in Grand Forks is called Recovery Reinvented. We're told the 6th annual event is intended to be a forum where innovative responses to addiction can be discussed. Burgum has her own inspiring story where she overcame an addiction to alcohol. This will be the first year that Recovery Reinvented will take place in Grand Forks. And a Bismarck judge is reaffirming his decision to temporarily block North Dakota's abortion ban from taking effect. The ruling came down yesterday after the state Supreme Court asked Burleigh County District Judge Bruce Romanak to reconsider his previous decision. Romanak originally ruled that the abortion ban would be blocked while a legal battle continues between North Dakota officials and the Red River Women's Clinic. This is Ty Schoner with The Flag and AM1100theflag.com. First at the news when you need to know.
I'm former State Senator Curtis Olofsson. I'm a lifelong farmer and rancher and business owner and a national spokesman for addressing our nation's debt. I served in the State Senate from 2006 to 2012, and I'm running to return to the Senate in the new District 10 in Fargo to bring my experience to bear for this new district. Together, we will address the ever-increasing rate of crime, find solutions to our child care crisis, and recruit and retain great teachers for our schools. Vote for experience. Vote for Curtis Olofsson on November 8th.
Paid for by District 10 Republicans, Curtis Olofsson Chair.
1 week left. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
Well, I've come to Florida today to talk about two very, very, very important programs.
President Biden doubling down on his claims Republicans would slash Social Security and Medicare if they retake control of Congress.
He said one of the state's Republican senators, Rick Scott, has proposed sunsetting federal programs and having Congress vote on them again every 5 years. The president said this could put entitlement programs on the chopping block.
A senator from Florida going after Medicare and Social Security? I tell you what, I don't know where, as they say in Southern, don't know where y'all been. Hot damn, boy.
Scott has said the programs are running out of money. And the House Minority Leader has said with a Republican majority, they will curb spending, but he did not commit to less spending on entitlement programs.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal, the president also telling voters his policies are making progress and lowering costs. Georgia's Republican Governor Brian Kemp disagrees and says some issues cross party lines.
Whether you have a job or not, whether you can care for your family, whether your kids are in the classroom.
He's trying to fend off a rematch challenge from Democrat Stacey Abrams. The man accused of attacking House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband in their California home last week, just making his first court appearance in San Francisco, pleading not guilty. He'll be held without bail for now. 42-year-old David Chapman facing multiple state and federal charges. The Pentagon thinks Russia could seek more help from Iran and Ukraine.
Defense Department spokesman Brigadier General Pat Ryder tells reporters the U.S. has concerns Russia may seek additional advanced munition capabilities from Iran.
For example, surface-to-surface missiles to use in Ukraine. And so if we see Russia employing such capabilities on the battlefield, we'll certainly do what we can to illuminate that.
Responding to reports suggesting Iran is expected to carry out an attack on targets in Saudi Arabia or in Iraq, where U.S. troops are located.
Fox's Kristen Goodwin. America is listening to Fox News.
Missed you this morning. Kim told me you weren't feeling well, so I'm just doing a self-care check.
Oh, thank you, friend.
How you doing?
Girl, listen, my energy was so low because I didn't eat breakfast when I got up, so I had to miss virtual yoga with y'all.
Trust me, I understand.
But I'm doing much better now that I've eaten, so I'm back on track.
Great. In that case, let's get some steps in tonight. I'll come over and we can walk around the lake.
Sounds good. Appreciate you being in my business, too. Now, let me get in yours. Did you check your blood pressure today?
I did that and my squats, okay?
Okay.
High blood pressure is not going to be my friend if I can help it. See you at 6?
Let's get it. See you then.
Now more than ever, it's important that we protect our hearts and the hearts of those we love. Check in on one another and be a part of a healthy blood pressure movement. Rally your squad to take the online pledge at releasethepressure.org. Brought to you by the Release the Pressure Coalition and the Ad Council.
Unseasonably warm throughout this evening with light wind out of the south-southeast around 5 to 15 miles per hour. We'll have temperatures sliding through the 60s into the 50s, only bottoming out to a low in the upper 40s throughout tonight under partly cloudy skies. We'll see the wind picking up for your Wednesday, though, gusting as high as 35 miles an hour at time with partly cloudy skies and increasing clouds throughout the afternoon. Temperatures will reach into the lower 70s. From the Flag Skywatch Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Justin Storm.
Hey, it's Alex Taylor and Kevin Flynn. Do not miss the Need to Know Morning Show. Wednesday starts at 6. We got coffee to win from Moxie Java.
We'll hear about meat science, compliments of the McRib from Bridget Riedel. The wind will be kicking up. Wysocki tells us how much. Brian Cronk of Collins & Cronk lets us know what direction the market's going. And it's crunch time for the sock fundraiser.
Kyle's got the news. I'll check the sports page. All that and more. Wednesday starts at 6. Kevin and Alex on the Need to Know Morning Show on AM 1100, 92.3 FM, The Flag.
Live from the PetroServe USA studio, it's the Chris Berg Show, your daily dose of truth to help set you free.
I was born free. Welcome to the Chris Berg Show. Hopefully we're living free as well, and hopefully we'll die free. That's the objective, to keep our freedom. Greetings. My name is Kim Koppelman. I'm guest hosting for my friend Chris Berg today. First time I've done this. I've guest hosted for Scott Hennon on his program previously a couple of times, but it's great to be here guest hosting for Chris. I've known Chris for a number of years, met him years ago when he was doing a different kind of work. And when he got on the radio, he and I began doing a program on the Constitution, which we did repeatedly, and that was an excellent experience for us. So I've known him over the years and have appreciated him and the work he does. A little background on me, if you're wondering who is this guy. I am the Speaker of the House in the North Dakota Legislature, the North Dakota House of Representatives. I've had the privilege of representing West Fargo, District 13, since 1994, so I've been there for a long time. And I am retiring this year. I will have about a month left in this position. As of December 1st, I will be a legislator no more. And that will feel different because I've been doing it for a long time, but there's a right time for everything, and this is the right time for that. So I still obviously have a great interest in politics. I have a great interest in what's happening in our state and region and nation. And I know you as listeners do as well. So we hope to hear from some of you today. We also have some guests, and there's a bit of an elephant in the room, I know, with some of the listeners who do know me, and so I'm just going to share that. Hadn't intended to, but I think I will, just out of the outset. I lost a brother yesterday. I have two brothers. They're significantly older, 15 and 18 years older than I am. And my brother Ken, who lives in Houston, Texas, passed away yesterday. It wasn't a shock. We were sort of expecting it. We knew it was coming, but it's still very difficult to lose someone you love. So super producer Chris Larson asked me, do you still want to do this? Do you still want to go on? I said, absolutely. Number one, I know he would want me to go on. And secondly, this is important stuff, and I don't want to let my friend Chris down. So it's good to be with you, and we look forward to a good discussion today. We have a couple of guests coming in, and we look forward to talking with them. In the first half hour, we're going to be talking about elections quite a bit, and we have a very knowledgeable gentleman to do that. The second half is a discussion about the loss of representative government, the threats to representative government in our nation. And we'll cover that a little more closely with a learned attorney who is vying to be a judge, another gentleman who I've been acquainted with for a number of years. The first gentleman I'm going to introduce to you, though, is someone I have not met, despite the fact that he has worked for the state of North Dakota for almost 3 years. His name is Brian Newby. And let me give you a little of his background because it's pretty impressive. We have an election coming up, as you all know. Today is the first day of early voting. Many people have already voted absentee, which you can continue to do. You can now vote early at various sites around the metro. And certainly Election Day, November 8th, is on everyone's radar. That's coming up very soon as well. But Brian Newby is currently the North Dakota the state elections director in North Dakota. Prior to this, he has worked at the county, state, and federal level in overseeing election operations. He started with Johnson County, which is the largest county in Kansas. It's in the Kansas City area, well over 500,000 people there. And he also served as executive director of the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, which is a federal government agency. He also worked as the state elections director in North Dakota, and that's what he's doing now. And he served under and was appointed by 3 secretaries of state in the state of Kansas, both Republicans and Democrats, which I think speaks well of him and his professionalism. And he is actually the only election commissioner in Kansas state history to be appointed by Republican and Democrat secretaries of state. So he wasn't just a holdover. He was actually appointed by people from both parties. He also was a short-term elections observer in Georgia and Albania, and that's the country of Georgia, not the state. Some of you may think we need election observers there, but this is the country of Georgia and also the country of Albania. He's been with the Secretary of State's office since December of 2019, so almost 3 years. And I think we have him on the line. So, Mr. Newby, Brian, welcome.
Hey, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. And let me just again express condolences for the loss of your brother. I've actually lost my brother several years ago, and my parents both, so I know those feelings.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Well, we just got acquainted on the phone about an hour ago. I've not, even though I've been in the state legislature for many years, we have not had the privilege of meeting yet. And I was visiting with called a gentleman who I kind of lean on for election information in North Dakota, Jim Silram, who is our Deputy Secretary of State, a few days ago. And as we were visiting last week about a number of things going on in our state relative to elections, I said, gee, I'd like to have you on this radio program that I'm going to be guest hosting next week. Unfortunately, he had a conflict, but he said, this guy is much more knowledgeable than I am. So you come well recommended, Brian. And obviously, you've had a wealth of experience. So people are thinking a lot about elections. Let me just start from the general perspective, and that is that our elections, just like our politics, have become disappointingly divisive, I think, in our nation recently. And what do you think about that?
Well, I think as an election administrator, it's really hard. I mean, you have a presidential candidate in 2016 who has yet to accept that she lost. You have a 2020 presidential candidate you could say the same about. You have a 2018 governor candidate in the state of Georgia that has yet to concede that she lost that race. So there's no reason I think this won't change. It'll be the same in 24, and it's just really rough. But, it's as an election administrator, you kind of know you're doing a good job, I guess, if members of both parties at some point question what you're doing if you're pulling for the other side. But it's just rough. You hear it from all sides, and right now it's just hard to be an election administrator. We've lost a lot of county auditors, in fact, over the last couple of years, and as people have left the profession in the country.
Well, and I know that here in Cass County, our longtime county auditor Mike Montplaisir retired. Now I don't know if he was driven into retirement because of this vitriol we hear out there, but may have been planned. But even here, we have new folks in those roles, so I understand what you're saying. And it seems to me that one of the things about when we talk about politicization of elections, and as you pointed out, people are criticizing the process, they're discounting the results, and so on. But it becomes politicized. What I hear the left often saying is a couple of things. They say count every vote. Well, I agree with that. I've said for years, I agree. We should count every vote, but I'll qualify that a little bit. Count every legitimate vote and count it only once. And I think if we do that, we're on the right track. And that should be something everyone agrees with. They also accuse the right of trying a voter suppression, trying to prevent people from voting or stopping people or making it difficult to vote. And the answer to that I'm hearing from a lot of people on the right now is no, we want to make voting easy. We want to make voting easy to vote, but hard to cheat. And I think that's a pretty good response. But again, both sides need to come together. I've worked with people across the aisle. I'm an unabashed conservative. I love what Mike Huckabee once said. I'm a conservative. I'm just not mad about it. And I think that speaks to our political climate, that we can believe what we believe, but treat each other with respect and respect one another's positions and so on. And I see less and less of that all the time in the halls of government, especially around the nation, but to a disappointing degree, even here in North Dakota. So we had an Attorney General's opinion just recently issued about our election process in North Dakota. And Brian, would you like to just kind of share with the viewers what that was about?
Sure. I mean, I think one thing just to talk about an opinion from an attorney general is it's not a just a point of view or kind of a whim, I guess, an attorney general would have, and it's not a decision by an attorney general also on some item. It's usually a matter that's put in front of an attorney general to help interpret the law in case this matter were to go to court. And so it's just a background on that. And I know that in Cass County, they requested an attorney general opinion that very specifically said, hey, when someone comes in and says they're a citizen, we might show in our system that they're not. Can we do a set-aside ballot and have them come in and cure it later by proving they're a citizen? And I wasn't surprised at the answer from some other stuff I've been involved with in the federal government. But the Attorney General opinion says that there is no legal basis in Century Code right now, or even federal law, that would allow election workers to say, prove it, essentially. Show us your, proof of citizenship. And that just means on election day, or when people come in to vote, they're still going to be asked if they're a citizen or not. Because sometimes if they say no, you're really doing them a favor, preventing them from voting. They may not know they can't vote. But you're asking that, and if they say, yes, I'm a citizen, and if it appears to be something that would suggest otherwise, essentially the election worker must take their word for it, that person's word for it. And what that leads to eventually would be potentially a cure if the legislature could come up with one in the next session.
Right. And we thought we had done that. We've worked on this issue for many, many years. I think we've made great improvements to our election process through legislation in North Dakota. And yet there always seems to be these twists and turns, and there are always challenges and ways people want to challenge things. I think, and I'm assuming this for a moment, but I think that most of our viewers or our listeners rather, would agree that citizens should be able to vote, and it shouldn't be a difficult thing to do, but that only citizens should be able to vote. I mean, I would not want to go to our close neighbor to the north here in Canada, and I know some people actually serve in the Legislative Assembly in Manitoba, up in Winnipeg. I wouldn't make an attempt to go up there and tell them how to run their government or vote. I'm not a citizen of Canada. And I think most people would agree that only citizens of the United States should vote in an election in the United States. So we've improved a lot of things. Now, when you talked about a set-aside envelope, let me explain to the listeners what that is. Basically, the idea would be that you are still going to allow people to vote, but their ballot would go into an envelope with their name on it. They then would be asked to go and get their credential or proof that they're a citizen, whatever that might be, bring it back. Either that day to the polls. If it was a matter they just forgot their driver's license at home or something, they could go do that. But if they required further proof, they could come back. And the way the law was for a while that we had in North Dakota was they could come back before the canvassing board met anytime, which is several days after the election, just to prove their citizenship. They would be handed their ballot again. No one would have looked at it, and they can put it right in the ballot box, and their vote would count at that point. The problem with what the Attorney General's opinion leaves us with is that even if they are found to be voting illegally, and I think the penalties are pretty stiff for doing that, the criminal penalties, the problem is that where's the ballot? I mean, if a state's attorney chased someone down for voting illegally, and they were proven to have voted illegally, even prosecuted them, and they faced a criminal penalty, where is that ballot? Well, it's in the ballot box. So the vote counted if you don't have the opportunity to do that set-aside envelope you're talking about. So what are your thoughts about that? And is that a big problem? The lack of the ability to do that, I should say.
Sure. I think, and I just can look at it from an election administrator, and I've been one in Kansas and in North Dakota, and then I've spent some time living in Maryland, the DC area. And when you go to the coast, I would say this would be the same way in California. A lot of people don't understand why this is a big deal. And I think generally people still believe that only citizens should vote. It's the proof of citizenship that seems to be a third rail when you get to outside of the Midwest. And I've had to look people in the eye when they've asked, well, do you require proof of citizenship? And I say, no, they have to just say they are. This was in Kansas. And I've seen the disappointment. I know that people are upset about that. So that's
Brian,
how do you communicate? Yeah,
absolutely. We need to go to a break, but stay with us, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Interesting discussion about elections.
Looking for a rewarding career in healthcare with excellent benefits? Help enrich the lives of the men and women who served our country by joining the North Dakota Veterans Home family. Whether you're a registered nurse, certified nurse's assistant, medication technician, social worker, or have a background in administration or maintenance, we may have something available for you. Visit ndvh.nd.gov to learn more about career opportunities today.
This ad is sponsored by the North Dakota Cares Coalition and aired in cooperation with the North Dakota Broadcasters Association and this station.
Guess who's attacking Measure 1 and the term limits that 81% of North Dakota voters support?
Let me guess. Career politicians and lobbyists?
You got it. Term limits are working for the people in 36 other states. And with a yes vote on Measure 1, term limits will finally be put to work for us.
I agree. In North Dakota, citizens should be in charge, not career politicians. I'm voting yes on Measure 1 for term limits. Paid for by U.S. Term Limits. Howard Rich, Chairman.
Hi, it's Nancy Kelly from Labor Masters. Election season is upon us, and we're proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the election coverage on AM 1100.
Your farm and business depends on a reliable source for energy. PetroServe USA is the customer-owned co-op committed to being a stable source of fuel for your equipment and propane to dry your grain. We have the capacity to make sure you never run out of fuel and to keep prices stable. Dependability, competitive prices, and exemplary service. That's PetroServe USA, helping America fuel better.
PetroServe USA.
Call today.
They can fit your business right into the right building, the right size for your staff, and the right location. Jose Investments knows where in town, who the players are, and how to get the deal done. Is 2022 the year you need to make the move into a building that fits your operation perfectly? Give Jose Investments a call today. Call Scott Jose at 701-306-8535.
I'm David Chapman. I'm a candidate for judge. For 25 years, I've enjoyed tremendous success in our community, but it is time to give back. I love freedom, our country, and our Constitution. If elected, I will enforce the law as it is written, not as I wish it were written. I invite you to visit Chapman for Judge on Facebook, and I would be honored to serve.
Paid for by David Chapman.
Hi, I'm Grant Nelson, NDSU Bison basketball player. Whether it's playing basketball or driving in my car, I want to do everything to the best of my ability, on the court and off the court. So when I'm in the car, I up my game with the Drive for Less program from Nodak Insurance. I could save up to 30% on my premium just for driving safely. To me, that's a slam dunk. Download the Nodak Insurance app today.
I just want to listen to this music for a while. This is my era. Let the music play. We are back on the Chris Berg Show. Kim Koppelman guest hosting, and Speaker of the House in North Dakota, former chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and also served for years on the Political Subdivisions Committee. Back in the day, the political subs dealt with a lot of the election issues, and we have with us today the North Dakota the top election official, actually, in the state of North Dakota, the state elections director, Brian Newby. And we're talking a little bit about elections. We've got one going on right now with early voting, absentee voting, and voting at the polls next week. So important stuff happening. There was an attorney general's opinion issued recently. We were talking about that a moment ago. By the way, if you want to call in and ask questions or talk to Mr. Newby, visit about this, please do. The number is 701-271-1100. Again, 701-271-1100 if you want to call in and join the conversation. One note about Attorney General's opinions, and as Mr. Newby noted, they are merely opinions. I find it interesting, and I've known our attorneys general. I've worked with former Attorney General Heidi Heitkamp, also for a long time with the late Attorney General Wayne Stenjum, and now with our new Attorney General, Drew Wrigley. Worked with General Wrigley back when he was our Lieutenant Governor as well. And we've had good Attorney Generals in North Dakota. But at the bottom of the Attorney General's opinion, they always put a little phrase that says, "This shall govern unless a court changes the content of the opinion." Well, that's a nice statement, and people do respect that to a great degree, but there's nothing in the law or the Constitution that says that. So the deference we give Attorney General's opinions is essentially just that, just deference and respect. But they do tend to have an effect. So, Mr. Newby, good to have you back with us, and maybe talk with the people, with our listeners about anything you'd like to share about the election coming up, what you think is important. We have several contested races on the state level as well as on the local level and in legislative districts and so on around our state. Why is it important for people to vote, and what should they do? How should they educate themselves, in your opinion, before they vote?
Well, I think that obviously, control your own destiny is a big reason to vote more than anything. And I think that the thing to really know about right now is that the legislature went through the process that happens every 10 years to enact redistricting within the state. So everybody listening right now, there's a chance that they may be in a different political district, legislative district, maybe by that nature. Then that may also change what's on their ballot compared to what used to be on their ballot. So we would recommend everybody go to a website, vote.nd.gov, vote.nd.gov, and you can go there and look up your own information, look at your sample ballot. There's a little box in the top right corner. And there's also a box right straight forward when you go in that says November 8th election. And if you go there, you can also make sure you know where your polling place is. It has a link to go to that. You can also look and see who's on the ballot. It wouldn't look like your ballot at that point, just be all the candidate lists, the contests, all that information is there. So I think vote.nd.gov, have a plan so that you know where you're going to vote, when you're going to vote. As you mentioned, a lot of early voting sites are open now in larger counties. And then I guess from an analyst standpoint, I guess that not sure what the turnout will be. I've looked at some of the last elections in 2018, 14, and 10. Political climate might say it feels a little more like 2010, but there were obviously fewer people in the state then. There was 240,000 people voted that year. In 2018, there were 330,000 people, but I think there was a big measure going on. Plus, that was a very intense Senate race. So I'm expecting somewhere between, I don't know, but 240, 250,000 people will vote. And right now we've had about 62,000 people vote. And early voting is usually about 40% of the turnout. And so if that's the case, we'll probably see about somewhere around 125,000-ish, maybe a little less before we get to election day.
Very good. Well, and it's important, as you said, and I appreciate you bringing the point up about redistricting, because not only has that occurred, which means that people might even be in a different legislative district than they were before. They might have known their legislators for years, and all of a sudden they go to the polls and find out there are strange names on the ballot. So as you point out, it's a good thing to do a little homework in advance. You mentioned measures. We do have 2 measures on the ballot that are important this year, as well as some local ones, but 2 that are statewide. One would legalize legalize recreational marijuana. Medical marijuana is legal in North Dakota. This would basically make it legal to use recreational marijuana, and there are a lot of different opinions on that. The other measure has to do with term limits, and again, a lot of different opinions. We do turn over about a third of the legislature in North Dakota, typically roughly 30% or a little more every election cycle. So the ballot box is a good term limiter, especially in a state where we have citizen legislators. And of course, those that are for it say throw the bums out. They've been there too long. Those that are against it oftentimes will point out that if legislators are all newbie, no pun intended on your name. Yeah, where he was. But if all the legislators are new, they don't know where the bones are buried. They don't know how the process works, and the bureaucracy and the lobbyists often run the show. And so that's the danger of term limits. And for that reason, even though it wouldn't affect me, I'm retiring, but I think it's good to have some wisdom and some knowledge and some experience there, along with the new crop of legislators that come in every single election cycle in North Dakota. One of the things that is unique about North Dakota is the fact that we have no voter registration. We are the only state in the nation that has no voter registration. When I tell people from other states about that, they are amazed, and they say, well, how in the world can that work? So Brian, tell us, walk us through that. How does it work in North Dakota? And from what you've told me, you had kind of the same reaction until you really watched it up close, and now you think there's some big advantages. So talk about that.
Sure. I mean, when I heard about North Dakota not having voter registration years and years ago, I thought, wow, these are crazy daredevils. Because it just sounds like there's no control, but there's great control. And the idea basically is our central voter file is comprised of people who have gone essentially to Department of Transportation to get a license or a non-driver's license. And there are other ways that you can provide ID to vote, including a tribal ID. And we've tried a lot to get that database of who has tribal IDs into the central voter file too, because we think that would make it even more robust, but that hasn't happened yet. But when you think about it, I mean, I remember when I was 6 years old, my mom picked me up from school one day and I was like, hey, what's going on here? And she said, that's people at the election. I went, oh, they're voting? And she goes, no, they're registering to vote. And even at 6, I thought, what a ridiculous concept. They already know who you are. I mean, it kind of gets back to the proof of citizenship in a way, I guess. But
sure.
The idea that you have to register to vote almost becomes a method of voter suppression, if you think of it that way. You have a gate to get to before you can vote. You have to pass this deadline. And a lot of states have what's called automatic voter registration, which has concerns. And we're kind of like that because of the lack of voter registration. But by not having voter registration, we're also not subject to the National Voter Registration Act. Right. And there are a lot of requirements on that, I mean, it'd be a whole nother call to get into that or a whole nother show.
Sure.
But that might be the opening for North Dakota's legislature to push something on proof of citizenship in a law that might withstand federal lawsuit. And so,
correct.
You know, there are a lot of advantages to not having voter registration, I guess, is the bottom line.
Very good. And, you know, I don't think the North Dakota legislature would be afraid of a lawsuit filed for doing the wrong thing. I've always been an advocate. Sometimes people say, oh, gee, we better not do this or that, or we might get sued. My attitude is do the right thing. And then if you get sued, deal with it. And I think in North Dakota, that would be the prevailing thought. I think we have some very good federal judges in North Dakota. And some of the state ones I have some questions about after some recent events, but that's a personal opinion, although there are a lot of good ones there as well. And so, you know, I have good faith in the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals and in our U.S. Supreme Court right now. So I think if we were poised for such a lawsuit over something as silly as wanting to ensure that people who vote are citizens, I say bring it on myself. So, but great points. What have you learned in North Dakota coming here? You have great experience in the election field. Coming to North Dakota, what's different other than the lack of voter registration? What's different about North Dakota elections here, and things that you've noticed in coming into this job?
Well, I think it's maybe not as much what's different in North Dakota as what a trend is. And years ago, I was around in the federal government when the whole issue came up about potential Russia involvement, intervention in elections, and I saw that firsthand. That I saw how that was a little bit fabricated, frankly. That's again another topic. But one of the reasons at the time that we thought, well, it'd be hard to infiltrate the elections is that there are about 3,200 elections ran differently, 3,200 counties. I used to think when you hear Florida goes for this candidate, the whole state operated the same way, but they all kind of have the same laws, but they all operate slightly differently. And while that was a great thing, I think, to prevent someone, nefarious behavior, I guess, I think there's a movement afoot, and we're seeing this in North Dakota. We would like to standardize the way the voter experience. So when you vote in Cass County or you vote in Stark County, your experience is almost identical.
Very good.
And
unseasonably warm throughout this evening with light wind out of the south-southeast around 5 to 15 miles per hour. We'll have temperatures sliding through the 60s into the 50s, only bottoming out to a low in the upper 40s throughout tonight under partly cloudy skies. We'll see the wind picking up for your Wednesday, though, gusting as high as 35 miles an hour at time with partly cloudy skies and increasing clouds throughout the afternoon. Temperatures will reach into the lower 70s. From the Flag Skywatch Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Justin Storm.
Hey guys, Ryan here from Dave's West Fargo Tire and Service. Did you know that we offer full-service automotive repair and maintenance, not just tires and oil changes? With fuel and vehicle prices being high, properly maintaining the car you have now is more important than ever. Why replace what you already have? Let us help you keep your vehicle performing in top condition. Give us a call at 277-8618 on the web at davestire.net, in person at 1225 Main Avenue East in West Fargo. Stop by and see us. Your car will be glad you did.
Here's Police Chief Dave Dreyevich.
Marijuana ruins lives. Legalizing marijuana will increase addiction and mental illness. It will make our streets less safe, and it will lead to increased drug use, especially by kids. The backers of Measure 2 are not telling you the truth. Marijuana is not safe, and we don't need another way for people to ruin their lives. Please join law enforcement from across North Dakota and vote no on Measure 2.
Paid for by the Brighter Future Alliance. Pat Finken, Chair.
Oil and natural gas help provide the things our counties and communities need. Taxes paid by the oil and natural gas industry fund schools, roads, and flood protection across North Dakota. That means we can run our farms and businesses and educate leaders for our future. It's one of the many ways oil and natural gas are making life better in North Dakota for generations. North Dakota's oil and natural gas, advancing the possibilities.
Hillary Clinton is back. She's even attacking President Trump and MAGA supporters again. She now claims Republicans have a plan to steal the 2024 election. Now Dick Morris says Joe Biden won't run again and that Hillary Clinton will run. It's all in Dick Morris's new book, The Return. Dick Morris has been Trump's political advisor. You've seen him on Newsmax and top networks. In The Return, Morris reveals Trump's secret plan to win again. But Morris says Trump still faces 3 big threats. Former President Trump urges you to get The Return. And Mike Huckabee said The Return is the only book to read this year. Everyone is talking about The Return. An Amazon #1 bestseller. Get Dick Morris's The Return in bookstores everywhere, or check out the free offer from Newsmax and save $28. Just call 800-NEWSMAX. That's 800-NEWSMAX. Or go to The Return 911 to get your copy today. The Return 911.com to get your copy today.
I'm David Chapman, and I'm a candidate for district judge. Our courts were designed to interpret and enforce the law. Our courts were not designed to write the law, which is the job of our elected legislators. In North Dakota, our judiciary carefully respects this special role, and I am a candidate because I wish to use my years of experience to continue that tradition of enforcing the law regardless of personal preference. If elected, I would be honored to serve.
Paid for by David Chapman.
There's one man on this earth who really, truly gets it.
The Marxists, the Democrats, they put party first. Party before country. The allegiance is to the party. The Democrat Party as an institution has had very little allegiance to the country, from slavery to Marxism and everything in between. They have allegiance to themselves. That's why they will try and elect Fetterman at all costs. It doesn't matter as long as he fills a spot.
Mark Levin is on the radio.
Mark Levin, weekdays at 5, only on the Flag.
Summer breeze makes me feel fine.
Summer breeze. I'm afraid we're losing that. We've enjoyed it, but I think it's on the way out. We have appreciated it. Representative Kim Koppelman, Speaker of the House in North Dakota, guest hosting on the Chris Berg Show today, and good to have you all with us. If you wish to comment, you can do that online if you're watching online, or if you want to call with a question or want to join the discussion, feel free to do that. 701-271-1100. Again, 701-271-1100. We're talking with the North Dakota State Elections Director, Brian Newby. And Brian, I'm sorry the break kind of snuck up on us there. I think we cut you off. I apologize for that. But please, if you want to finish what you were saying, please do.
Well, sure. I was just simply saying that I guess I get to the point better, is that in North Dakota, we are a kind of a top-down state where we have the same voting system throughout the state. We have the same technology throughout the state. And I think one of the things that North Dakota would benefit from more and more would be a standardization of what I've said, the voter experience. Mm-hmm. And we're hoping to make that a big priority and in the coming years. And I think there's a good opportunity to make that a new priority, just because we will be having a change in leadership in the Secretary of State's office after this election. And I think I would think that would be just a priority for the new person, is to try and standardize that experience.
Right.
And that's the thing I think I've noticed most.
Excellent. Well, that's great. And I think in North Dakota, we are very proud of our elections. They are fair. They are free. They're efficient, I believe, and that's thanks to your office, the Secretary of State's office, for all the good work you've done over the years. And I know, as I said, in my experience as a legislator, we have worked very closely with the Secretary of State's office to improve the process of our elections, and I think we've done a good job of that over the years. It's still not perfect, as witness this current controversy that we were just talking about, but I think we can do good things and continue to improve it as we go. Listeners, it's important to vote. If you haven't voted already, either by absentee ballot or at one of the remote early voting sites, and by the way, those have changed, just like your districts may have changed. So where you went to vote before may not be the place you go to vote now. So Brian, give us that website again where people can go to find out all that information.
It's vote.nd.gov. Vote.nd.gov.
Very good. And we appreciate you being with us. Any other thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners?
No, I just appreciate the time you've given me today. Thank you.
Very good. And thanks for all the work you do. And we look forward to a good election cycle and the sacred responsibility to vote, the sacred responsibility also to be educated voters and to learn about the candidates, the measures, and other things we'll be considering this year. So we encourage everyone to get out and do that. And thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you again.
And coming up shortly, we have another guest. This one is in studio, and we'll be talking with him shortly. His name is David Chapman, and you may recognize that name because I think he's had a couple of ads on the air, even as we've sat here in this program. David Chapman is an old acquaintance, an old friend of mine, and he is running for one of the positions to become a judge, a district judge in North Dakota, and a longtime attorney. He is not originally from North Dakota. He may want to talk about that. But one of the things, I did not invite him on because he's a candidate. I've invited him because I know he has great knowledge of our process of government in the United States of America and in the state of North Dakota. And I've admired the way he has grasped that, the way he is able to articulate that, and his commitment to doing things the right way. And so, David, tell us where you're from. Welcome. Tell us where you're from originally.
Originally, myself, I'm from Canada, from Winnipeg.
Very good.
And I came down here to law school in 1992, and I've been here, except for a small break, I've been here since then.
And I don't want you to criticize your native land, but I've heard you do that on occasion because you are a proud American and you are a citizen. So you can vote, you can run for office. You immigrated the right way, and I believe in your legal practice you work with people that want to immigrate the right way as well. We are a nation of immigrants, and sometimes, especially conservatives, get accused of being against immigration. Not true. We are for legal immigration, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one of the things that David and I have talked about over the years that I think is very important is, and it's something that I lament a bit because I see this on the federal level. I see it to some degree on the state level, sometimes more in other states than our own, thank goodness. But it is the erosion of the power of the people. You know, people that talk about the right of people, they talk about democracy, they talk about people basically driving their own government. That only works in a representative republic, which is what we are, if the people and the branch of government that the people elect to represent them does its job. But what happens occasionally is there are threats to representative government, the people's voice, because we have something called executive overreach, where the executive branch of the government, be it the president of the United States, be it a governor, be it a mayor, tends to want to do things, and they issue executive orders. Now, some of those are very appropriate, but some of them step over the line into legislating, and they shouldn't be doing that. They issue the agencies of government can create something called administrative rules, something that I've worked a great deal on in North Dakota. And again, some of those are appropriate, some of them overstep. And we've taken steps in North Dakota to try to balance that. The other threat is maybe more familiar to, or at least historically more familiar to the audience, and that is the threat from the judicial branch of government. We hear about judicial activism. We hear about activist judges who really want to legislate from the bench, make their own law rather than following the law. And I've heard David opine on this, so maybe comment on that if you would.
Yeah, and actually the judicial activism is probably the biggest issue that we've seen it in. Actually, one of the largest areas where there's been an erosion of separation of powers is in the rise of the administrative state. But the judicial branch also, in terms of judges injecting their own personal feelings into decisions that have brought a lot of criticism, especially on the federal level. And where we see this the most, of course, is U.S. Supreme Court nominations and confirmation hearings, where there's a lot of questioning that goes on regarding this.
That's right. And, one of the recent decisions, of course, that has captured the nation's attention is the Dobbs decision dealing with the issue of abortion. And again, it becomes a political football, and people are so invested in the issue, be they pro-life or pro-choice, they get dug in on that issue and want to debate it based on that. And that's, again, a debate that should happen in the legislatures, should not happen in the courts. Many people, even people who are for abortion, that I've talked to that are legal scholars, say that Roe versus Wade was a terrible decision. It was terribly written, terribly crafted. Even if they like the result, they thought the decision was poor. They thought that it was overreach because it put the court in a position of making a political or policy decision rather than adjudicating something constitutionally, which is what their job is. And even now with the Dobbs decision, what that really did, I've heard people say, oh, now abortion is illegal all over the country. No. Now abortion goes back to where it was before Roe versus Wade, which is back to state governments, and the state legislatures decide. So again, where do the people have a greater voice? Is it by allowing 9 judges in robes in Washington, D.C. to decide an issue like that? Or is it allowing those who they elect to represent them in their state legislatures to decide the issue?
Exactly. And the contact between our government and the people is what was intended in the beginning to shape legislation and to shape policy. And the contact between the people and the House of Representatives, for instance, is a lot closer because you're in that constituency, a lot closer than someone in North Dakota would have contact with the Supreme Court justice. So that is not the venue that was designed to decide issues such as this. And even on the local level, the legislatures, the state legislatures, they have a closer representation and relationship with the people in their constituency than the courts do.
Sure.
So that's what it was designed for.
So that's a great point, David. And if we right size this, if we bring it back to where it was intended, I tell people around the country that in North Dakota, we still do it right. We still do what our founders intended, which is to elect neighbors from among us, to go citizen legislators, to go represent us at the state capitol for a short time. They all have other jobs or other businesses and families and other things. You can't make a living being a legislator in North Dakota. Thank goodness. I don't think you should be able to. We're not paid very much. Thank goodness. I don't think we should be because it's public service. And then we elect those neighbors to go represent us at the capitol for a short time. And then they come back and they live among those they represent under the laws they pass. So my experience as a legislator is I'll run into constituents in the grocery store and they'll say, hey, about that bill you guys debated last week, I want to talk to you about that. That's true representative government, as you just said. And again, you don't have that with the governor. You don't have that with the North Dakota Supreme Court members, much less the U.S. Supreme Court justices. So I agree with you. I think that's a very important facet. What have you seen in terms of, and what disappoints you or concerns you in terms of the overreach we're talking about?
Federally, it would be reading their own personal feelings into a decision. I don't see that a lot statewide because the North Dakota Supreme Court's been pretty clear in terms of this is a code state. You look for the intent of the legislature in the language that's used, using the plain and ordinary meaning. So they're pretty much given their roadmap. But federally, you see it all over the board, all across the country.
Very good. And we will be back with David Chapman on the Chris Berg Show. Stay tuned.
Attention North Dakota farmers. When asked if he supported federal crop insurance, Rick Becker, candidate for the U.S. Senate, said,
"No, I don't support any federal insurance."
It's clear that Rick Becker doesn't understand the importance of federal crop insurance to farmers and ranchers. Without federal crop insurance, North Dakota would be just one natural disaster away from wiping out our ag economy. It is also clear that Rick Becker has little respect for our farmers and ranchers.
The American farmer was the epitome of a rugged individual that was on their own, that made their way, and they've become barely anything more than a tool of the federal government.
Rick Becker will end federal crop insurance, and North Dakota farm families will pay the price.
North Dakota Strong paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. Learn more at northdakotastrong.org.
When it's time to build outside the box, build with Thor.
Stan, my mother's coming to stay with us indefinitely.
I need a space for the boys. Where can we watch the big screen, play cards, eat wings, drink, and work?
Stan, there's no room in the garage for my garden tools.
Need more space, whether it's a granny flat, a man cave, a decked out shop condo, or a she shed, or a horse barn. They've gotten creative when it comes to thinking outside the box. Thor Buildings at thorbuildings.com.
Hey, Flag listeners, Spencer Brand here from Media Shack LLC. Do you want to get started on your project today? All your business branding needs, including but not limited to signs, embroidery, screen printing, custom apparel, banners, vehicle decals, wide format printing, and much more. And we do it all in-house. If you can dream it, we can do it. Contact us today, Media Shack Fargo at 701-612-9363, and ask for Carson, or online at MediaShackFargo.com.
Have you ever thought about selling your home but quickly talk yourself out of it when you consider all the repairs, cleaning, inspections, open houses, and the unknown of what price your home will actually sell at? Stop stressing. We will buy your home as is with no appraisals or costly commissions to worry about. You can even pick your closing date. Call me, John Nosala with JK Property Partners at 701-306-3229 or go to FargoHomeValues.com for an instant valuation.
Experience, better service. It's what you'll get from Irie Insurance and Bethany Rents. Tell us why you're so passionate about agriculture.
My passion for agriculture stems from having the opportunity to grow up in a farming family.
Your boots have been in the field too.
Yes, I was a crop adjuster for 10 years prior to becoming a crop insurance agent.
Bethany's boots will be right in the field with you, and nobody beats her all-star service. Here's her cell phone number, 701-740-2983. Bethany Rents, Irie Insurance.
Irie Insurance is an equal opportunity provider.
Where the hell am I? Hey, 19. No, we can't dance together. We can't dance together. You can't talk at all. Please take me along when you slide.
Welcome back to the Chris Berg Show. Guest hosting today, North Dakota Speaker of the House, Kim Koppelman. It's good to be here and good to be sitting in the chair of my good friend Chris. We've had a couple of guests today on the program. Brian Newby, who is the election administrator for North Dakota, talking about our elections coming up. And currently in the studio, we have David Chapman, who is a local attorney, and he's also running for judge. And as I mentioned earlier, I invited him to come on as a guest, not because he's a candidate, but because I've appreciated his views and some of the discussions we've had about the proper role of the courts, the proper role of the various branches of government. Of course, in Canada, it's a completely different thing. They don't have the three branches the way we do here. And the executive branch and the legislative branches are sort of merged. And the majority party in the legislative branch becomes the government. And they hold what we would analogize to executive offices, I guess, in the United States. So we are a wonderful system here in America. And we're all proud of that. And hopefully are good stewards of that. One of the things that we've talked about a little bit is the idea that the other two branches, and I've said this for a long time, especially on the federal level, but to a greater degree also on the state level, is the other two branches of government tend to encroach upon legislative authority. And why is that important and why is that a threat? Because it's the legislature that represents the people. And if you have people in black robes on a court, doing the work of that should be done by the people's representatives in a legislative body, be it a state legislature or the Congress on the federal level, that's a problem. If you have people who are presidents or mayors or governors doing the legislature's job from the executive branch as a figurehead in the branch of government that is supposed to apply and enforce those laws and not to make them, that's equally a problem. In North Dakota, several years ago, I worked on something that most people don't know much about, administrative rules. And it's, if you want people's eyes to glaze over, just start talking about administrative rules, but it's a pretty inside baseball discussion. But all it is the agencies of government making these rules that carry the force and effect of law. Now pause for a moment and think about that. Who makes law? Well, according to the Constitution, it's the legislative branch, again, the people's representatives in the legislature. As soon as you delegate that authority to another branch of government, you better be careful. And in North Dakota, we started doing that, I believe, back in the 1970s, long before my time in the legislature. But when I came, I said, this is a problem. The tail is wagging the dog. And so we, probably the one greatest achievement, I believe, that I've made in North Dakota is I introduced a bill my very first session to give the legislature authority over those rules. Agencies can still make them, but the buck stops with the legislature. If they exceed beyond legislative intent, if they're arbitrary or capricious, and there are 6 little factors in the law under which the Legislative Administrative Rules Committee can void a rule, or what happens far more often is agree with an agency to amend a rule if there's a problem with it. And that creates a great check and balance. But a lot of states don't have that. And now in recent years, in fact, our law became a model nationally, and some states are following that. Some have taken a little different approach to it, but are also just as aggressively reasserting that legislative authority over those administrative rules. And another thing that's become more familiar to the public probably recently are executive orders. Presidents of both parties have made a lot of executive orders. Again, if they're to govern how their office does work or whatever, that's fine. But if they try to make law, we're going to forgive student loans.
Right.
That's an executive order. No. That should be a law if it's going to happen. Thoughts about all of that?
The most famous executive order would be DACA, the Deferred Adjudication for Early Childhood Arrivals on immigration law. The Congress could not come to a conclusion on immigration, so President Obama just wrote an executive order and created an entire new class, basically, of immigration, where he would grant employment authorization and the ability not to be deported. And interestingly, when it went up to the Supreme Court, when President Trump tried to get rid of it, the Supreme Court said you did it improperly within the rules. And Justice Thomas's opinion was probably about the best there, where he said, how can you improperly get rid of an illegal rule to begin with? He said the rules shouldn't apply.
Sure.
But
well, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, Ronald Reagan once said that the scariest words ever spoken are, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help. And, I think back to other Supreme Court decisions, Sandra Day O'Connor, who was not necessarily known as an extremely conservative justice, but yet she wrote a wonderful dissent in the Kelo decision on something called eminent domain, which is the right of government to take private property for a public purpose or public use.
Right.
Now, the problem, again, becomes the definition of terms. We're getting in the weeds here a little bit, but if you say public purpose, what does that mean? To collect more tax dollars? Well, no, the idea was public use. If you were putting an interstate highway through or a railroad or something, and some private property owner said, you can connect those rails, coast to coast, but not going over my farm to connect them. Well,
right.
Then the government can say, wait a minute, we're going to pay you a fair price, but we are going to seize that land to do it. That was the original idea.
Yeah, and within eminent domain itself, on the federal level, it says that you can take it for a public purpose with just compensation.
Right.
And the law now under the Constitution has become so overweighted towards the compensation, and that public use is basically a non-issue now. And
Very
in Kelo, it was a decision that basically said improving property values and getting rid of blight was good enough.
Well, and I remember, can't quote it exactly, but Sandra Day O'Connor said under that theory, every Motel 6 could be torn down to build a Ritz-Carlton, and that's just not the way it should be. Well, we could go on for a long time, but the time sneaks up on us. I want to thank you, David Chapman, for being here. You are a very knowledgeable legal expert, and I appreciate that. I wish you well in the upcoming election. You'd be a great judge. Thanks for being with us on the Chris Berg Show today. We appreciate it, and we hope we've all learned something.
It's time for the Richardson Report, your ag weather focus on the field with NDSU ag meteorologist Daryl Richardson.
November. For good or bad, I've always considered today to be the first day of winter in this region.